Most people have held this coin in their hands and never gave it a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple 1964 Lincoln penny with a small D, mint mark, carries a hidden story of American history, collector passion, and quiet value that still surprises people today? This coin is the 1964 D mint mark Lincoln penny, officially called the Lincoln cent. It looks ordinary at first glance. Abraham Lincoln on the front, wheat-free design, brown copper color, and that tiny letter D beneath the date. Millions were made, and yet, decades later, collectors still search through jars, rolls, and inherited collections hoping to find the right one. To understand why this penny matters, we need to go back to 1964. America was in the middle of enormous change. The country was dealing with the aftermath of President Kennedy's assassination. The civil rights movement was reshaping society, and the economy was growing fast. At the same time, something unusual was happening with coins. People were hoarding them. Silver prices were rising, and many Americans feared that coins would soon change forever. In fact, 1964 would become the final year that the United States minted circulating coins made of real silver. Pennies were not silver, but they were part of this same moment of uncertainty and transition. The U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of coins to meet demand. That is why so many Lincoln pennies were struck in 1964. The Denver Mint alone produced over 3 billion Lincoln cents that year. That tiny D, mint mark, tells us this coin was made in Denver, Colorado, one of the busiest mints in the country at the time. Speed mattered more than perfection, and that detail plays an important role in why some of these pennies are valuable today. The 1964 D Lincoln penny is made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This gives it a solid feel and a rich reddish-brown color when well preserved. Modern pennies no longer have this composition, which makes older copper cents appealing to collectors and investors alike. The design is classic and familiar. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, a portrait originally designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty. To the right is the date, 1964, with the small d just below it. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, Lincoln himself can be seen seated inside the memorial, one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. At first glance, nothing seems rare about this penny, and that is true for most examples. In worn condition, a 1964 D penny is usually worth just 1 or 2 cents. But coin collecting is about details, and details are where this coin becomes interesting. Because the Denver Mint was striking coins at such a fast pace, mistakes happened. Some 1964 D pennies show errors that collectors actively seek. One of the most famous is the double die obverse. On these rare examples, parts of the lettering, especially Liberty or the date, appear doubled. This was caused during the die-making process, not by damage after the coin was struck. Another error collectors look for is off-center strikes. These happen when the blank coin planchet is not properly aligned during striking. The result is a design that appears shifted, sometimes dramatically. Depending on how off-center the strike is and whether the date is still visible, these coins can sell for much more than face value. There are also broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a proper collar, causing it to spread out and appear wider than normal. These errors are subtle but noticeable to trained eyes, and they add personality and value to an otherwise common penny. Condition matters even more than errors. A 1964 D penny that has never been circulated, especially one with full original red color, can be surprisingly valuable. Collectors use grading terms like mint state to describe coins that show no wear. In very high grades, such as MS67 red, these pennies become extremely scarce. At auction, a top-quality 1964 D Lincoln penny with blazing red color and sharp details has sold for several $1,000s. These are not everyday coins. They are the best of the best, preserved perfectly for over 60 years. Most were spent, scratched, or dulled by circulation, making pristine survivors rare. Even more modest high-grade examples regularly sell for $20, $50, or $100, depending on eye appeal. Error coins can range from a few $100s to well over $1,000, depending on the type and severity of the mistake. Of course, popularity brings imitation. While fakes of common pennies are rare, altered coins do exist. Some people try to add a fake mint mark or alter dates. To identify a real 1964 D penny, always start with the basics. The mint mark should look natural and raised, not scratched or glued on. The surface of the coin should be consistent, without unusual tool marks. Weight is another clue. A genuine 1964 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. If it feels too light or too heavy, that is a red flag. Magnification helps as well. Under a simple loupe, real mint marks blend smoothly into the coin's surface. One surprising fact about the 1964 penny is how many still exist. It is estimated that billions are still out there in jars, drawers, and collections. Yet only a tiny fraction are in top condition. This makes searching both exciting and realistic. You might not find a fortune, but you could discover something special. Another fun detail is that 1964 pennies were struck longer than usual. The mint continued producing 1964 dated coins well into 1965 to meet demand, even as designs and metals were changing. This makes the year 1964 feel like the final chapter of a long era in American coinage. Collectors love the 1964 D Lincoln penny because it sits at the crossroads of history and everyday life. It is not a museum piece locked away behind glass. It is a coin people used to buy bread, newspapers, and candy. It passed through countless hands during a time of national transformation. For new collectors, it is approachable and affordable. For experienced collectors, it offers challenges in finding top-grade examples or rare errors. And for historians, it is a quiet witness to a pivotal moment in America. The next time you see a small copper penny dated 1964 with a tiny D beneath the year, take a moment to look closer. That coin has traveled through decades, survived massive changes in money itself, and still carries stories waiting to be discovered. Sometimes the most interesting treasures are not hidden in vaults or buried underground. Sometimes they are sitting quietly in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Most people have held this coin in their hand and never looked twice. But what if I told you that a simple 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark could tell a powerful story about American history, hidden errors, and why some collectors quietly search their change for this exact year? This coin is the 1967 Lincoln 1-cent penny, struck during a very unusual time in U.S. history. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary old penny. Abraham Lincoln on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back, brown or slightly red color, nothing flashy. And yet, the year 1967 sits right in the middle of one of the most confusing and fascinating periods in American coinage. To understand why this penny matters, we need to go back to the 1960s. The United States was facing a nationwide coin shortage. People were pulling silver coins out of circulation and hoarding them. Vending machines, banks, and everyday businesses were struggling to get enough coins. The government needed a solution, and fast. In response, the U.S. Mint made several big changes. One of the most important was removing mint marks from coins entirely. From 1965 through 1967, no U.S. coins carried mint marks, no matter where they were made. This was done to discourage collectors from hoarding coins from specific mints. So when you see a 1967 penny with no mint mark, that is not a mistake. That is exactly how it was supposed to be. The 1967 Lincoln penny was struck primarily at the Philadelphia Mint, but also at other facilities, all without mint marks. Millions were produced because pennies were heavily used in daily life. At the time, no one thought these coins would ever be collectible. They were made to be spent, not saved. The metal composition of the 1967 penny is also important. It is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This is the classic bronze composition that pennies used for decades before later changes. Because of this high copper content, many 1967 pennies have developed rich brown, red-brown, or even bright red tones over time, depending on how they were stored. The design itself is familiar but full of detail. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head and the year 1967 below. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with tiny columns that are so detailed you can even see Lincoln seated inside if the coin is well preserved. The words "1 cent" and "United States of America" frame the design. So if millions were made, why do people still talk about the 1967 penny today? The answer lies in condition, errors, and survival. Most 1967 pennies were heavily circulated. They were used in stores, dropped on sidewalks, rolled through banks, and handled for decades. As a result, finding one in truly excellent condition today is much harder than it sounds. Pennies that were never circulated, especially those with original red color, are far scarcer than their mintage numbers suggest. Collectors place a premium on condition. A worn 1967 penny might be worth only a cent or two, but a sharply struck, uncirculated example with full detail and bright color can be worth significantly more. Some certified examples in top condition have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars, simply because so few survived untouched. Then there are the errors. This is where things get interesting. Like many coins from the 1960s, the 1967 penny is known for certain mint errors. These include doubled dies, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. Look closely at the lettering, especially "In God We Trust" and "Liberty." On genuine doubled die examples, the doubling is clear and separated, not blurry. Another known error is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank was not properly aligned during striking. Off-center 1967 pennies can show part of the design missing, sometimes dramatically. Depending on how off-center the strike is, these coins can bring strong interest from collectors. There are also clipped planchets, where a piece of the metal blank was missing before the coin was struck, creating a curved or straight clip on the edge. These errors are real, collectible, and often misunderstood by the public. Because 1967 pennies are so common in worn condition, many people overlook them. That makes error examples even more exciting, because they can still be found in old jars, inherited collections, or rolls that have never been searched carefully. Now let's talk about value. Most regular 1967 pennies are not rare. In average circulated condition, they are usually worth only a few cents. However, uncirculated examples with strong eye appeal can sell for $10 to $50, sometimes more. Certified coins graded at the highest levels by professional grading services have sold for much higher amounts at auction, especially those with original red color. Error coins are where prices can jump quickly. A genuine double die or major off-center strike from 1967 can sell for hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and strength of the error. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and they are documented in collector records. Of course, whenever money is involved, fakes and misunderstandings appear. So how do you identify a real 1967 Lincoln penny? First, check the date. It should clearly read 1967, with no mint mark below the date. The absence of a mint mark is normal for this year. If someone tells you the coin is valuable simply because it has no mint mark, be cautious. Value depends on condition and errors, not the lack of a mint mark alone. Second, examine the weight. A genuine 1967 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage or alteration. Third, look closely at the details. The lettering should be sharp, not mushy. If you suspect doubling, compare it with known examples from trusted coin references. Real doubling has depth and separation. Fake doubling often looks flat or smeared. If you believe you have a high-quality or error example, professional authentication is always recommended. A reputable grading service can confirm whether your coin is genuine and assign it an official grade. There are also some fun and surprising facts about this coin. The 1967 penny comes from the final year of the no mint mark era. In 1968, mint marks returned to U.S. coins. That makes 1967 a quiet ending to a unique chapter in American coin history. Another interesting detail is that many people confuse 1967 pennies with later copper-plated zinc pennies. The weight and sound are different. A 1967 penny has a heavier, more solid feel because of its copper content. Collectors also enjoy searching 1967 pennies because they represent a bridge between old and modern coinage. They were made before proof coins resumed widespread production for collectors, and during a time when the mint was focused purely on quantity over perfection. Today, collectors love the 1967 Lincoln penny not because it is flashy, but because it rewards patience and knowledge. It teaches an important lesson in coin collecting. Rarity is not just about how many were made, but how many survived in top condition. For beginners, it is an affordable and accessible coin. For experienced collectors, it is a challenge to find in pristine shape or with genuine errors. And for everyday people, it is a reminder that even the most common objects can hold hidden stories. So the next time you come across an old penny, take a moment before you toss it aside. Look at the date. Look at the details. That quiet brown coin from 1967 may not make you rich overnight, but it connects you directly to a moment when America changed how its money was made. And sometimes, the most interesting treasures are not the rarest or most expensive ones, but the ones hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to really look. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, for some collectors, the 1975 VDB Lincoln penny has become a quiet reminder that hidden stories often live in the most overlooked places. If you've ever held one of these coins, or if you grew up in the 1970s and remember pennies actually buying something, this story might change how you see that small copper coin forever. The 1975 VDB Lincoln penny was made in the United States during a time of economic pressure, rising prices, and big changes in American life. The letter D on the coin tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest mints in the country. In 1975, billions of pennies were produced to keep up with everyday commerce. Pennies were still essential. You needed them for newspapers, candy, parking meters, and change at the corner store. This coin belongs to the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1975, Lincoln had already been on the penny for more than 6 decades, making it one of the most familiar designs in American history. That familiarity is exactly why many people underestimate coins like this one. In 1975, the United States was dealing with inflation, energy shortages, and a changing economy after the Vietnam War era. The cost of metal was rising, and the government was watching closely how much it cost to make each coin. At this time, pennies were still made mostly of copper, with a small amount of zinc mixed in. Specifically, the 1975 D penny is about 95% copper and 5% zinc. That alone makes it different from modern pennies, which today are mostly zinc with just a thin copper coating. On the front of the coin, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right. The design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and it has remained one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty. In front of his face is the phrase "In God we trust." Just below the date, you'll find the small D mint mark, indicating it was made in Denver. On the back, the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, which had replaced the earlier wheat design in 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. It's one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. At first glance, there is nothing flashy about this penny, and that's exactly where the story gets interesting. The 1975 D penny is not rare in the traditional sense. Millions upon millions were made. You can still find them in old jars, drawers, and inherited collections. But value in coin collecting is not always about how many were produced. It's about condition, mistakes, and survival. Most 1975 D pennies were heavily used. They were carried in pockets, dropped on sidewalks, scraped across counters, and stored in damp places. Because of that, finding one today in excellent condition is far more difficult than it sounds. A bright, clean, sharply detailed example that looks almost new can be surprisingly hard to find. Even more important are mint errors. During the 1970s, the U.S. Mint was producing coins at a rapid pace. With speed comes mistakes. Some 1975 D pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is shifted to one side. Others show doubled letters or numbers, where parts of the design appear slightly repeated due to a misalignment during the striking process. Some have weak strikes, missing details, or unusual marks caused by damaged equipment. These errors are where collector interest really begins. A normal, worn 1975 D penny might be worth only a few cents, but an error coin, or one in exceptionally high condition, can sell for far more. Collectors are willing to pay premiums for coins that stand out from the billions of ordinary examples. There have been auction sales where high-grade 1975 D pennies, graded by professional services, sold for impressive prices. Coins with deep red color, strong details, and no signs of wear have reached prices that surprise people who assume modern pennies are worthless. Error coins from this year have sold for even more, depending on how dramatic and well documented the mistake is. The key word here is verified. To identify a genuine 1975 D penny, start with the basics. The date should read 1975, and the mint mark D should appear just below the date. The coin should feel solid and weigh close to the standard weight for copper cents of that era. The color should be a natural brown, red-brown, or red, not shiny like a modern plated coin. Be cautious of coins that look too perfect or have unusual surfaces. Some people alter coins to make them appear rare. Others may polish them, which actually lowers their value. Real collectors prefer original surfaces, even if they show age. If you believe you have an error coin or a high-quality example, professional grading is essential. Reputable grading services examine the coin, confirm its authenticity, and assign a condition grade. This step separates true collectibles from wishful thinking. There are also some fun details about the 1975 D penny that many people don't realize. For example, because it is mostly copper, the metal value alone can sometimes exceed the coin's face value, depending on copper prices. That fact has made older pennies popular with people who sort and save coins, even if they're not collectors. Another interesting detail is that 1975 was one of the last years before major changes in American coin production methods and materials. Coins from this era represent the end of an old system, when everyday money still had real metal weight behind it. Collectors today love the 1975 D penny not because it's flashy, but because it represents a moment in time. It's a snapshot of 1970s America, a period of challenge, change, and resilience. For beginners, it's an affordable entry into coin collecting. For experienced collectors, it's a reminder that condition and details matter more than hype. This penny also teaches an important lesson. Value is not always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in small differences, tiny errors, or careful preservation. A coin that looks ordinary can become special when you learn its story. So the next time you see a 1975 D Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over. Look closely. Think about where it's been, how many hands it passed through, and what it says about the time it came from. Because in the world of coin collecting, even the quietest penny can still have something to say. Most people have held this coin in their hands and never thought twice about it. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But the 1988 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny has a story that surprises a lot of people, especially those who still have jars of old change sitting at home. This coin is a Lincoln 1-cent penny struck in 1988 at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small letter D just below the date. At first glance, it looks exactly like millions of other pennies from the late 20th century. Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait is on the front, and the Lincoln Memorial appears on the back. Yet this penny was made during a turning point in American coin history, and certain examples have quietly become far more interesting than their face value suggests. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the year 1988. The United States was deep into the modern era. Cash registers were everywhere, vending machines ruled offices and schools, and pennies were still being used heavily in everyday transactions. The U.S. Mint produced billions of 1-cent coins each year to meet demand. In 1988 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 5 billion Lincoln cents. That massive number is one reason most people assume the 1988 D penny is worthless. But quantity is only part of the story. The Lincoln penny design itself had already been in use for decades by 1988. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front was first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse was added in 1959, replacing the earlier wheat stalk design. By 1988, this design was deeply familiar to Americans, but the way the coin was made had changed dramatically behind the scenes. Earlier Lincoln pennies were made mostly of copper, but rising metal prices forced the U.S. Mint to change the composition in 1982. By 1988, pennies were made primarily of zinc, with a very thin copper coating on the outside. This change made the coin lighter and cheaper to produce, but it also introduced new problems during manufacturing. Zinc is softer than copper, and that softness led to an increase in striking errors and imperfections. The 1988 D penny is made of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. It weighs about 2.5 grams, much lighter than older copper cents. On the front, you'll see Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" along the top, Liberty to the left, and the date with the D Mint mark to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands in the center, with United States of America and 1 cent around it, and E pluribus unum above the building. So why does any of this matter? Because the combination of massive production, zinc composition, and high-speed minting created opportunities for unusual coins to slip through. While most 1988 D pennies are worth just 1 cent, certain examples stand out sharply from the rest. One of the most important factors is condition. Pennies from circulation often show scratches, dull surfaces, and worn details. But a 1988 D penny that has never been used, never handled much, and still shows bright original luster can be surprisingly scarce. Collectors call these mint state coins, and they grade them carefully. A coin that looks perfect to the naked eye may still show tiny flaws under magnification, and those small differences can mean big changes in value. High-grade 1988 D pennies have sold for far more than most people expect. In professional coin auctions, examples graded at the very top of the scale have sold for hundreds of dollars. These are coins that survived decades without being spent, often preserved in rolls or mint sets. Their value comes not from rarity in numbers, but from rarity in condition. Errors are another area where the 1988 penny becomes fascinating. Because of the zinc core and fast production speeds, some coins were struck incorrectly. Off-center strikes are one example. These coins show part of the design missing because the metal blank was not properly aligned when struck. Broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal due to collar issues, are another type collectors look for. There are also pennies from 1988 that show dramatic die cracks. These cracks appear as raised lines on the coin, caused by damaged minting dies. In some cases, the cracks are so large that they catch the eye immediately, turning an ordinary penny into a collectible error coin. Another interesting issue involves plating problems. Because the copper layer on zinc pennies is extremely thin, sometimes it fails to bond correctly. This can lead to bubbling, peeling, or missing copper areas. While damaged coins are usually worthless, true mint errors where the plating failed during production can attract collector interest. Real auction examples show how wide the value range can be. Circulated 1988 pennies usually sell in bulk for just a few cents over face value, but uncirculated rolls have sold for modest premiums. Individual coins graded at the highest levels by major grading services have reached prices that surprise casual collectors, sometimes crossing the $100 mark or more. Error coins, depending on the type and severity, can also sell for anywhere from $20 to several $100s. With value comes the risk of confusion, so knowing how to identify a genuine 1988 penny is important. Start with the basics. The date should read 1988, and the mint mark D should appear just below the date. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it weighs significantly more, it may be an earlier copper penny or something altered. Examine the surface closely. Genuine mint errors usually look natural, with smooth metal flow and consistent wear patterns. Damage caused after the coin left the mint often looks sharp, rough, or unnatural. Scratches, dents, and corrosion are not valuable errors. If a coin seems unusual but you're unsure, professional authentication is always the safest step. One fun fact about the 1988 penny is that many people unknowingly saved them. In the late 1980s, coin collecting was popular among kids and families. Some people set aside rolls of new pennies, hoping they would become valuable someday. Decades later, those same rolls are being opened and searched again, sometimes revealing pristine coins that never entered circulation. Another surprising detail is how fragile these pennies can be. Because of the zinc core, they corrode much faster if the copper plating is damaged. That makes well-preserved examples harder to find today than you might expect, even though billions were made. Collectors today appreciate the 1988 penny not because it is legendary or ultra-rare, but because it represents an era. It reflects the shift from traditional copper coins to modern materials. It shows how mass production can still produce surprises, and it reminds collectors that value isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about condition, timing, and small details most people overlook. For many collectors, searching through pennies like the 1988 is part of the thrill. It's the idea that something ordinary could still be hiding a story, or even a bit of unexpected value. Every jar of change becomes a small treasure hunt, and every penny deserves a second look. So the next time you see a 1988 penny with a small d beneath the date, don't dismiss it too quickly. Look closely. Check the condition. Watch for unusual features, because even one of the most common coins in modern American history can still surprise you, and sometimes the quietest coins carry the most interesting stories. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket, one you have probably ignored 1,000 times, and realizing that it might carry a story far bigger than its 1-cent face value. A story hidden in plain sight. Today, that story belongs to the 1989 no mint mark Lincoln penny. This coin looks ordinary at first glance. It does not shine like gold or sparkle like silver. It feels familiar, almost boring. And yet, millions of Americans have unknowingly handled this exact penny without ever realizing what makes it special, why collectors still search for it, and how a simple detail or mistake can change everything. The 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States in 1989 at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins from Philadelphia traditionally did not carry a mint mark, so the absence of a letter under the date is completely normal for this penny. That missing mark is not an error. It is a clue to where the coin was made and a key part of its identity. In 1989, the Lincoln cent was already a familiar part of daily American life. The design featuring President Abraham Lincoln had been in use since 1909, making it the longest-running portrait on U.S. coinage. By the late 1980s, this penny had passed through generations of hands, from shopkeepers to schoolchildren, from piggy banks to couch cushions. The year 1989 itself was a turning point in history. The Cold War was ending, the Berlin Wall was coming down, and the world was changing rapidly. While global events captured headlines, the U.S. Mint continued its quiet, steady work, producing billions of coins to support everyday commerce. Among them were over 5 billion Lincoln pennies struck in Philadelphia that year alone. These pennies were not made to be rare. They were made to be used. Gas stations, grocery stores, arcades, and vending machines all depended on them. That is exactly why so many people overlook them today. But collectors know that sometimes value is not about how rare something was meant to be. It is about what survives and in what condition. The 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition began in 1982, replacing the earlier solid copper pennies. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge. On the front, or obverse, is Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln, facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1989 to the right. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Above it are the words "United States of America," and below, 1 cent. This design is iconic, but also surprisingly detailed for such a small coin. So what makes this penny interesting to collectors? The answer lies in condition, rarity within perfection, and the possibility of errors. While billions were made, very few survived in flawless, untouched condition. Most were scratched, dented, or worn down almost immediately. Finding one that looks exactly as it did the day it left the mint is extremely difficult. Collectors grade coins on a scale, and the highest grades represent coins with sharp details, original shine, and no visible damage. A 1989 no-mint mark penny in average condition is worth just 1 cent. But a perfectly preserved example, especially one professionally graded, can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. There are also error coins from 1989 that collectors actively search for. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, and double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misalignment during minting. These errors are rare, and when found, they can dramatically increase the coin's value. Some collectors have paid significant sums at auctions for top-grade 1989 Philadelphia pennies. Coins certified in extremely high mint state grades have sold for thousands of dollars, not because the date itself is rare, but because so few examples exist in that level of perfection. In the world of coin collecting, condition can matter more than age. To identify a genuine 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, start with the basics. Check the date and look under it. There should be no letter. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams and have a copper-colored appearance. Be cautious of altered coins, where someone may have changed a date or applied a fake mint mark. Real errors occur naturally during the minting process and usually show consistent, believable patterns. Magnification helps. A simple magnifying glass can reveal doubling, unusual textures, or plating flaws. If a coin looks suspiciously perfect or oddly altered, it may not be genuine. Professional grading services exist for a reason, and serious collectors rely on them for authentication. One surprising fact about the 1989 penny is how easily it can be overlooked. Many people focus on much older coins, assuming that age equals value. But modern coins can be just as desirable when they meet the right criteria. In fact, some collectors specialize exclusively in high-grade modern pennies, competing fiercely to complete perfect sets. Another fun detail is how the zinc core of these pennies can corrode over time if the copper plating is damaged. This means that truly pristine examples become even rarer as years pass. Time itself slowly eliminates potential high-grade coins, increasing demand among collectors. Collectors love the 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents a challenge. It is not about stumbling upon treasure. It is about patience, knowledge, and attention to detail. It is about finding something exceptional among the ordinary. That pursuit is what makes coin collecting so addictive and rewarding. This penny also serves as a reminder that history is not always locked away in museums. Sometimes it is sitting in a jar on your dresser or rattling around in your car's cup holder. Every coin has a story, and some stories are still waiting to be discovered. So the next time you see a 1989 penny with no mint mark, pause for a moment. Look at it closely. Think about where it has been, how many hands it has passed through, and whether it might be one of the few that survived untouched. Because even the smallest coin can hold a surprising amount of value if you know what to look for. And if this simple penny could hide such an interesting story, imagine what else might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right person to notice. Imagine opening an old jar of pennies, spotting a simple brown coin dated 1991, and wondering, could this ordinary-looking penny be hiding a story or even a little value? Most people would toss it aside without a second thought. But for collectors, that tiny detail under the date, or the lack of it, changes everything. Today we're talking about the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like one of the most common coins in America. But once you understand why it exists, how it was made, and what collectors actually look for, this humble penny becomes far more interesting than most people realize. The 1991 Lincoln penny is part of the famous Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1991, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for more than 80 years, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Millions of Americans used these coins every day for gas, groceries, and coffee, rarely stopping to think about where they came from. The key detail with this coin is the missing mint mark. When a Lincoln penny has no letter under the date, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. For most of American coin history, Philadelphia did not use a mint mark on pennies at all. So a 1991 penny with no mint mark is not an error. It's the standard Philadelphia issue. In 1991, the United States Mint was producing enormous numbers of pennies to keep up with everyday commerce. Vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers across the country depended on a steady flow of cents. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck well over 5 billion Lincoln pennies that year. That makes the 1991 no mint mark penny very common in everyday circulated condition. So why do collectors even care about it? To understand that, we need to look at the moment in history when this coin was made. The early 1990s were a time of transition for U.S. coinage. Inflation was rising, production costs were under scrutiny, and the mint was under pressure to produce coins as efficiently as possible. Every cent mattered, literally. The 1991 Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating on the outside. This change happened in 1982, when the mint switched from solid copper pennies to copper-plated zinc to reduce costs. By 1991, this new composition was fully standard, but it also introduced new possibilities for errors and unusual varieties. The design of the coin is classic and familiar. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the motto, "In God We Trust." The date 1991 sits below, and if there is no mint mark beneath it, that tells you it came from Philadelphia. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the design, which had been used since 1959. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Around the edges are the words United States of America, e pluribus unum, and 1 cent. In normal condition, a 1991 no mint mark penny is worth exactly 1 cent. Even in lightly circulated condition, most examples trade for just a few cents at most. But value in coin collecting is not always about the date alone. It's about condition, rarity within condition, and unusual mistakes. This is where things get interesting. Collectors pay close attention to 1991 pennies because some examples were struck exceptionally well. A penny that looks almost brand new, with sharp details, full shine, and no wear can be worth far more than face value. These are known as uncirculated coins. And within that category, the very best examples can sell for surprising prices. At professional coin auctions, top-quality 1991 no-mint mark pennies, graded by major services, have sold for anywhere from $20 to over $100, depending on their condition. These are coins that look nearly perfect, as if they were never used at all. That kind of value comes from scarcity at the highest grade, not from everyday circulation. Then there are errors. Errors are what turn an ordinary penny into something collectors get excited about. In 1991, the high-speed minting process occasionally produced mistakes. Some pennies were struck off-center, leaving part of the design missing. Others show doubled lettering, where parts of the words or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during striking. There are also pennies with cracked dies, where thin raised lines appear across the surface of the coin. These cracks happen when the metal die used to strike coins begins to wear out but is still used for production. Each crack is unique, making those coins more desirable to collectors. Another collectible error is a weak strike, where parts of the design appear unusually soft or faded. This can happen when the striking pressure is uneven. While not all weak strikes are valuable, some collectors specifically look for dramatic examples. So how do you know if your 1991 no mint mark penny is real and not altered or fake? First, check the weight. A genuine 1991 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, that could be a sign of damage or tampering. Next, look closely at the color. It should have a copper appearance, even though the core is zinc. If the coin looks silvery or oddly colored, it may have been plated or altered. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the details. The lettering should look clean and consistent. Be cautious of coins that appear too perfect but lack natural luster, as some altered coins are polished to look better. Polishing actually lowers a coin's value, even if it makes it shine. One important thing to remember is that simply removing a mint mark from a coin does not create a rare variety. Some people attempt to scrape or alter coins to make them appear special. A genuine no mint mark 1991 penny will show no signs of tampering beneath the date. Here's a surprising fact many people don't know. Because billions of these pennies were made, they are often used by beginner collectors to learn grading. Comparing worn examples to uncirculated ones helps new collectors train their eye. In that way, the 1991 penny plays an educational role in the hobby. Another fun detail is that many collectors who grew up in the 1990s feel nostalgic about this coin. It was part of everyday life during a time of major cultural change in America. For some, collecting these pennies is about memory as much as money. Collectors today appreciate the 1991 no mint mark penny, not because it's rare in general, but because it represents the difference between common and exceptional. It teaches an important lesson in coin collecting. Value is often hidden in condition and details, not just age. A worn 1991 penny that's been in circulation for decades tells a story of use. A pristine one tells a story of preservation. And an error coin tells a story of a tiny moment when something went slightly wrong at the mint. That's why collectors still search through rolls of pennies, old jars, and inherited collections. They know that even the most ordinary coin can become special under the right circumstances. So the next time you see a 1991 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Look for unusual details. Because while most of these coins are only worth 1 cent, a small number stand out, and those are the ones collectors remember. And who knows? That quiet little penny sitting unnoticed today might be the one that sparks your curiosity tomorrow. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and realizing it might not be as ordinary as it looks. A coin most people would ignore, spend, or toss into a jar could actually carry a hidden story that collectors across America still search for today. This is the story of the 1992 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that proves even modern pennies can hold surprises. At first glance, the 1992 Lincoln penny looks completely normal. It shows Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like millions of other pennies, and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. It has no mint mark under the date, which means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. Because billions of pennies came from Philadelphia, many people assume this coin has no value beyond 1 cent. But as we will see, the truth is more interesting. The year 1992 sits at an important moment in modern American coin history. The United States was still using the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been on the penny since 1959. The country was producing massive amounts of cents for everyday use, and pennies were still made mostly of zinc with a thin copper coating. This was long after the old solid copper pennies had disappeared, but before major design changes would arrive later. The 1992 penny was made during a time when speed and volume mattered more than perfection. The U.S. Mint was focused on keeping up with demand, striking coins quickly, and releasing them into circulation. Philadelphia alone produced billions of pennies that year. Most of them were meant to be spent and forgotten, and that is exactly what happened to the majority. The design of the 1992 no mint mark penny follows the familiar Lincoln Memorial style. On the front, Abraham Lincoln faces right, with the date 1992 to the right of his portrait. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head, and "Liberty" sits behind him. There is no letter below the date, which confirms it was made in Philadelphia. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands in the center. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. Around it are the words "United States of America," "E pluribus unum," and 1 cent. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and is made of zinc with a thin copper plating, giving it that familiar penny color. So if billions were made, why does this coin get attention at all? The answer lies in small details, minting variations, and condition. Most 1992 no mint mark pennies are common, but a tiny percentage stand out, and those are the coins collectors search for. One of the most important reasons this penny can be valuable is a rare design variation known as the close AM variety. On the back of most Lincoln Memorial pennies, look closely at the word America. On standard coins, the letters A and M in America are spaced slightly apart. On the rare close AM variety, the A and M are almost touching. In 1992, a small number of pennies were accidentally struck using a reverse design intended for proof coins. These proof-style reverses created the close AM look. This was not supposed to happen on regular circulation pennies, especially at the Philadelphia Mint. But mistakes happen, even at the highest level of coin production. The 1992 close AM penny is one of the most famous modern penny varieties. While it exists with a D mint mark as well, the no mint mark Philadelphia version is especially important. These coins are extremely rare compared to normal 1992 pennies. Many collectors believe only a small number were released into circulation, and most have never been found. Beyond the close AM variety, condition also plays a huge role in value. A 1992 no mint mark penny that is worn, scratched, or darkened is usually worth just 1 cent. But a coin that is perfectly preserved, with bright original color and sharp details, can be worth more to collectors even without errors. High-grade examples, especially those graded by professional coin grading services, can sell for several dollars or more. While that may not sound exciting, it is important to remember that this is a modern penny that many people still find in circulation. The possibility of value is what keeps collectors looking. When it comes to auction results, the numbers tell the story clearly. Regular 1992 no mint mark pennies in average condition usually sell for face value or slightly above. But uncirculated examples in top condition can sell for $10, $20, or even $50, depending on quality and demand. The real attention comes with confirmed 1992 close AM pennies. Verified examples have sold for thousands of dollars at major coin auctions. Some high-grade specimens have reached prices well into the four-figure range. These are not rumors or internet myths. These are documented sales that collectors study carefully. Of course, with value comes imitation. Many people hope their penny is rare, and unfortunately, some try to alter coins to make them look special. That is why learning how to identify a real 1992 no mint mark penny is important. First, check the date and make sure it reads clearly as 1992. Then confirm there is no mint mark below the date. Next, turn the coin over and look closely at the word America. Use a magnifying glass if possible. If the A and M are clearly separated, the coin is normal. If they appear very close or touching, you may have something worth investigating further. Another detail to check is the designer initials FG near the base of the Lincoln Memorial. On close AM varieties, these initials are often positioned differently compared to normal coins. This is a subtle detail, but it helps experts confirm authenticity. Weight is also important. A genuine 1992 penny should weigh around 2.5 grams. Coins that are significantly lighter or heavier may have been altered. Color matters too. If the surface looks unnatural, polished, or damaged, it may reduce value or indicate tampering. Professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity. Serious collectors rely on trusted grading companies to examine coins under controlled conditions. A certified coin removes doubt and increases market value. There are also fun facts that make this penny even more interesting. Many people do not realize that the close AM reverse was actually introduced officially in later years. The fact that it appeared early, by accident, makes the 1992 version especially important in Lincoln cent history. Another surprising detail is how many rare pennies are discovered years after their release. Some 1992 close AM pennies were likely spent at grocery stores, gas stations, or vending machines before anyone noticed. They could still be sitting in old jars, drawers, or inherited collections. Collectors love this coin today because it represents the thrill of discovery. It is not an ancient coin or a gold treasure. It is a simple penny that challenges the idea that modern coins are all the same. It reminds people that value is not always obvious. For beginner collectors, the 1992 no mint mark penny offers an easy entry point. It is affordable, easy to find, and teaches the importance of careful observation. For advanced collectors, It represents one of the key modern varieties to complete a Lincoln cent collection. This coin also holds emotional value. Many collectors remember the early 1990s. Finding a valuable coin from that era creates a personal connection. It feels like uncovering a hidden piece of everyday history. As you look through your change or old penny jars, remember this. The most valuable coin is not always the oldest one. Sometimes it is the coin you have seen 1,000 times but never really looked at. The 1992 no mint mark Lincoln penny may seem ordinary, but it carries a story of mass production, quiet mistakes, and rare survivors that escaped unnoticed. And that is what makes it special. So the next time you see a 1992 penny, don't rush to spend it. Turn it over. Look closely. Because somewhere out there, one small detail could turn an ordinary cent into a collector's discovery. And the only way to find it is to keep looking. What if a penny from 2006, a coin most people ignore every single day, could be hiding a story far more interesting than its face value suggests? Today we're talking about the 2006 Lincoln penny, a modern coin that quietly became one of the most misunderstood and surprisingly collectible pennies of the 21st century. Some collectors even refer to it as having 6 distinct mint mark and finish varieties, and that detail alone has caused confusion, curiosity, and real money changing hands. This coin is officially called the 2006 Lincoln cent. It features President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a design that had been used for nearly 50 years by that point. To the untrained eye, it looks ordinary. But the year 2006 sits at a very unique moment in U.S. coin history, and that's where things start to get interesting. The Lincoln penny was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 2006, the design was already considered iconic, but the U.S. Mint was quietly experimenting with finishes, production quality, and mint-specific variations. This was just a few years before the Lincoln Memorial design would be retired forever. In 2006, pennies were produced at multiple U.S. mint facilities. Philadelphia struck coins with no mint mark. Denver struck coins with a D mint mark. San Francisco produced special proof coins marked with an S. On top of that, the mint also produced special satin finish coins specifically for collector mint sets. When you combine mint marks with different finishes, collectors often identify 6 distinct collectible varieties from this single year. That's where the phrase 6 mint mark comes from. It doesn't mean there were 6 letters stamped on the coin. It means there were multiple officially issued versions that look similar but are very different to collectors. All 2006 Lincoln pennies were made from copper-plated zinc. That means the coin has a zinc core with a very thin outer layer of copper. This change was introduced in the early 1980s to reduce costs, and by 2006 it was standard. Even though the metal is modern, the quality of some strikes that year was unusually sharp, especially on the collector-only versions. The front of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" at the top, Liberty on the left, and the date on the right. If it's a Denver coin, you'll see a small d below the date. If it's from Philadelphia, there will be no mint mark at all. On proof coins from San Francisco, you'll see a small S. The back features the Lincoln Memorial, with the words United States of America and 1 cent, and the phrase E pluribus unum above the building. Look closely at the memorial columns, and you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside, something many people never notice. So why would a penny like this ever be valuable? The answer lies in condition, finish, errors, and collector demand. Most 2006 pennies you find in circulation are only worth face value, but certain versions were never meant to circulate. The satin finish coins from 2006, made only for mint sets, have a soft, smooth appearance that looks very different from regular pennies. These coins were handled more carefully and struck with higher quality dies. When a satin-finished 2006 penny survives in perfect condition, collectors pay attention. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. That may sound unbelievable for a modern penny, but rarity in condition matters more than age. Then there are proof coins. The 2006 proof penny has a mirror-like background and frosted design details. These were sold directly to collectors and never released into circulation. While common in lower grades, flawless examples with deep contrast can bring strong prices. Errors add another layer of value. Some 2006 Lincoln pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is visibly shifted. Others show doubled details in the lettering or date. There are even rare examples struck on the wrong metal planchet, which immediately turns a 1-cent coin into a 4-figure collectible if authenticated. Real auction records show that exceptional 2006 Lincoln cents have sold for far more than most people would ever expect. Certified satin finish coins in top grades have reached several $100s. Dramatic mint errors from this year have sold for even more, depending on severity and eye appeal. Because this coin is modern, fakes and altered coins do exist. The most common trick is polishing a normal circulation penny to make it look like a satin or proof coin. A real satin finish will have a smooth, even texture with no harsh shine. Proof coins will have sharp details and mirror-like fields, not dull or scratched surfaces. Always check the mint mark carefully. Look at the quality of the strike. And if a coin seems unusually perfect, professional grading is the only way to confirm authenticity and value. Here's a fun fact most people don't know. The year 2006 was one of the final full years before the Lincoln Memorial design was replaced. Just 3 years later, the reverse would change entirely, making coins like this part of the final chapter of a historic design era. Another surprising detail is that many collectors today specifically build complete sets of modern Lincoln cents by finish, not just by date. That means they actively seek out all versions from a single year, including the 2006 varieties. This demand keeps interest alive even for relatively young coins. Collectors love the 2006 Lincoln penny because it represents a moment when the U.S. Mint balanced mass production with collector-focused quality. It's affordable for beginners, yet challenging for advanced collectors who want perfect examples. And it proves that valuable coins don't always have to be old. So the next time you see a 2006 penny, don't dismiss it. Look closer, check the mint mark, study the surface. Because sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins are hiding the most unexpected stories. And who knows? That quiet little penny sitting in a jar or drawer might just be one of the most overlooked pieces of modern American coin history.